Chag Sameach, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom. So glad that we can just come together a little bit with a small group here to be able to welcome in the holiday. And this is a really, really special moment. It's a special moment to come into Passover 5781. That's a lot of years since the creation of the world, according to our tradition. And there are three main mitzvot of Pesach. We've talked about, and we know the mitzvah of staying away from chametz, the mitzvah of eating matzah tonight and tomorrow night. And there is also the mitzvah to tell the story. And this is really what we're approaching in this evening. And the telling of the story is not just the words of the Haggadah. And the sages were really, really clear about this. When the sages started, talking about the Seder, they said that the telling has to trace a journey from gnut to shevach, from shame or degradation to praise. And the Haggadah and the Seder and the words of that have evolved over time. But really what they wanted us to do was tell our own stories, to tell our stories as if we left Egypt. And there's a couple ways to think about it. One is to try to imagine that we were leaving Egypt back in the historical period of time, however many thousands of years ago, and what was that like, and going through that. The other way to look at it is that leaving Egypt, Yetziat Mitzrayim, is not something that just happened in one historical time. That was the foundational story. But all of us are always leaving Egypt. We're always Yetziat Mitzrayim. We're always leaving the narrow place, right? There's no end to the possibility of growth and engagement with life. And at any given moment, our present moment is a narrow place compared to what is waiting for us, the next moment, the next opportunity, the next place of growth. So we tell our story. The words of the Haggadah is meant to catalyze our own telling. What is slavery and what does freedom mean to us? When we look out in the world, where do we see bondage? Where do we see degradation? And where do we see freedom? And what's our part in that whole human drama? So we tell the story. That is the mitzvah. And so this Passover, if you are having Seder with people in person, if you're having it with Zoom, if you're just participating in different, Passover gatherings that we're having, we'll be gathering together for services tomorrow and Monday morning and having time for discussion. The mitzvah is to tell your own story, to tell your own truth in some way. And there's something therapeutic about that. There's something about the telling of our own story, not just to talk, but just to tell it in the context of our sacred drama, of our Yetziat Mitzrayim. There's a Rabbi Yitzhak of Berdichev has a wonderful way of talking about the word Pesach, which we know means to skip over, or it refers to the sacrifice. He divides the word into two: peh, which means mouth, and sach, which means speaks. So that's what Pesach is the mouth speaking. And I could even go on and talk a lot more, but let's begin this piece of the Haggadah story with where the story says that we should start, which is Abadim Chayinu, we were slaves.
עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורין, בני חורין. עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורין. עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורין, בני חורין. אתה בני חורין, בני חורין. עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורין, בני חורין. עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורין. עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורין, בני חורין. אתה בני חורין, בני חורין.
Okay. All right. So hopefully this Seder will have more of the words will be our own story, and to balance out the words of the Haggadah. A few thoughts about the journey of the Seder and the matzah, because the Seder steps as we go through really begin to trace what that process of bondage to freedom is really about for all of us. So we know we start out the Haggadah with sanctification, Kadesh, and then the ritual washing, Urchatz. And then we really begin the story. And one way to look at karpas as that growing leafy vegetable, that new life, is that is our natural human inclination. It is to grow, to open, to expand, to express ourselves, to be free people. And unfortunately, to take a psychological view, a lot of us know that because we had around us imperfect people, parents who were imperfect, other adults who are on their own growth journeys, they were not always able to reflect back to us the joy and the spirit that we shine, that we grow. And so sometimes we don't get mirrored in that same way. And so there's the parsley that is the karpas, that is this new growth, this new freedom. And what do? We dip it in the salt water to say we acknowledge, just like the Israelites grew in numbers and expanded, and then Pharaoh was threatened and began to enslave them, so we also have had ways in which our wings have not been able to fully spread in all of those things, and ways that we have gotten ideas about who we are that are limited. So, and sometimes that really hurts. And that's the fourth step. We have 3 matzot, and we take out the middle matzah and we break it. We break it. You know, part of it in the story that can liken to the element of the story when Pharaoh ordered all the firstborn children to be drowned in the river. I mean, that was a huge blow to the Israelites, huge. That breaking, some people say it's the breaking of their backs from the slavery. But for all of us, we have our own places of pain, our own places of brokenness. And the breaking, that yachatz, that fourth step in the Seder, is that breaking. And what happens when we break it? The tradition is you don't break it in half. You break it so that there's a smaller piece and a larger piece, right? The larger piece gets tucked away to be the afikomen later we wrap it and we hide it. And the smaller piece goes back in between the other 2 matzot. That's what happens. Part of our own journey, that bigger part of us, that more expansive part of us, that part of us that is ready to accomplish anything, gets hidden away, gets put away. There is, whether we want to even say, that idea that you hear that we only use 10% of our brains, like that, this kind of idea that there's so much more capacity that we have if we really learned how to cultivate it, or this sense that we have so much more potential for deep, deep engagement with life. But that's been kind of tucked away. And part of our process is to uncover it, to uncover it. So we move forward with that smaller piece. We move forward with that smaller piece. And then we move on in the Seder and we tell the story, the Magid. And we go through the parts of the story, and there's actually 3 different stories of liberation to redemption. There is the physical one that Cantor Young sung, Abadim Chayinu, we were slaves and now we're free. There's the spiritual one from the book of Joshua that says slavery didn't actually begin with Egypt. It began a lot earlier with Abraham and idol worship. That really it was our having our minds in the wrong place as the Jewish people, and idol worship that Abraham started that process of coming out of. And then we have the third story, which is more of the extended midrash on, which is really taken from this passage of Deuteronomy that that when people would come to Jerusalem, they would say a formula when they would offer their first fruits. My father was a wandering Aramean, and we were imprisoned and we suffered, and the Israelites cried out and God redeemed us with an outstretched arm. That's the third story. All of these process that we do grow and we do come out of those narrow places. And then, where do we end the Magid? We end with praise. We sing some pieces of Hallel. We acknowledge that we are on this journey and we are not stuck in these places and that God is present with us. And then we eat. And then, of course, after we eat, we look for the afikomen. And who is it that looks for the afikomen? Who is it that looks for that larger piece of ourselves? It's the children, right? It's the children that look for the afikomen, that look for what's hidden. And that's really kind of a key for each one of us to find that greater part of who we are. We need that child place to be able to go back and be able, with that kind of innocence, and greet life fresh, not cynical, open, hopeful. That's that element in us that is going to allow us to reclaim our greater presence and be in greater relationship with God.
וכשאני לעצמי מה אני, ואם לא עכשיו, מתי, מתי, בכל דור ודור חייב אדם לראות את עצמו כאילו הוא יצא ממצרים, יצא ממצרים. אם אין אני לימידי, וכשאני לעצמי מה אני, ואם לא עכשיו, מתי, מתי.
So far we've been speaking about a universal dimension of the Pesach story. That why it resonates so deeply is because it speaks to our very humanity, our very sense of everyone is on a growth journey. Everyone, Jewish or not, is on a place of growing towards greater awareness. It's the evolutionary process. And yet there is something that is very special in our story that I think speaks to us as this phenomenon of Am Yisrael, the people Israel, and this unique journey of the people that we are a part of throughout time and space. Back in the book of Genesis, God makes a promise to Abraham. And the promise is that your people, he says, are going to be enslaved for 400 years. But I will bring them out. And I will bring them out. They will become a nation. They will be brought out with great wealth, with great riches. God makes this promise. And it's very fascinating to think about this promise because the promise is one of pain and one of redemption. Pain and redemption. It is going to be the nature of the Jewish journey that there is going to be pain, that there is going to be bondage, that there is going to be slavery, that there are going to be the people who rise up against us in every generation. And it's a fascinating kind of academic exploration to really try to understand anti-Semitism. What is it about? Why do people, why do people hate the Jews? Why does this happen? And we could talk about it for a long, long time. And yet, over and over and over again, we survive. And not only do we survive, but we prosper with great riches, spiritual, material, all of it. We keep our relationship with the one. And there's something about that. There's something about being able to really claim and own that we are part of a people with a sacred mission. That we are Mamlechet Kohanim, as Mark taught a little bit earlier this Shabbat. We are a kingdom of priests, and that we have a particular message, a particular light to shine in the world, and we don't have to be afraid of shining that light because of this promise. Because of this promise. So as we sing this and as we encounter it in our Haggadah, and really feel a sense of freedom. In order for freedom to be authentic, we have to be willing and able to be honest about and embrace the pain and the impression of us and of all people, to be able to talk about it, but to know that we are here together and we will always be here together.
והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו. והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מהאדם. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מהאדם. והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו. Standing at the sea, Michamocha, standing at the sea, Michamocha, standing at the sea, Michamocha, freedom's on our way. Singing and dancing, Michamocha, singing and dancing, Michamocha, singing and dancing, Michamocha, freedom's on our way. Freedom, 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 freedom's on our way. Sing this with me. They're coming up behind Michamocha, they're coming up behind Michamocha, they're coming up behind Michamocha, freedom's on our way. Bounce no more, bounce no more, Michamocha, bounce no more, Michamocha, bounce no more, Michamocha, freedom's on our way. Freedom, 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 freedom's on our way.
See if you can come up with some hand motions for this. Here we go.
The sea she parts, Michamocha, the sea she parts, Michamocha, the sea she parts, Michamocha, freedom's on our way. Walking through the water, Michamocha, walking through the water, Michamocha, walking through the water, Michamocha, freedom's on our way. Freedom, freedom, freedom,
I like it, Mark.
freedom, 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 freedom's on our way. We're on the other side, Michamocha, we're on the other side, Michamocha, we're on the other side, Michamocha, freedom's on our way. One God, One God, mi chamocha. One God, mi chamocha. One God, mi chamocha. Freedom's on our way. Freedom, 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 freedom's on our way. Standing at the sea, mi chamocha. Standing at the sea, mi chamocha. Standing at the sea, mi chamocha. Freedom's on our way.
Singing and dancing.
Singing and dancing, mi chamocha. Singing and dancing, mi chamocha. Singing and dancing, mi chamocha. Freedom's on our way. Freedom, 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 freedom's on our way. Freedom's on our way. Freedom's on our way. Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag Sameach. That concludes our session as we head into the holiday. But I just wanted to say, and what I want to really wish everybody is, Cantor was leading this particular song here with the preschoolers. We were on with the preschoolers yesterday morning, and after we talked about it, I said let's do this song tomorrow. Let's do this tomorrow, because really that singing, that dancing, that child, right? It is really this key to freedom. This is part of the key to freedom here. And I want to just really invite us that during our Passover celebrations, however they may be, whether they're just on our own, whether they're just with one other person, that we sing. If you don't know the songs from the Seder, sing songs that you do know. Like sing, because what happens is a lot of the time is we do all the talking on the Seder. We're very comfortable with the talking and the Magid, and all of that happens. And then we eat, and then it's all done. But the singing is, it not only does it happen right before the meal, but it happens a lot more after the meal too. And that's the whole ball game. It's not just that we were slaves, but what does it actually mean to be free? And can we express that in our Seder? So Chag Sameach, everybody. Thanks for coming and joining us.